Shalom, peace, and blessings. Welcome to the Fourth Angels Learning Center. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. And I want to welcome you guys to the Romans chapter study. We are on chapter 13. And basically what we've been doing, if this is the first time you've been seeing this, we've been trying to harmonize between Paul's writings and the writings of Moses and the prophets. We're trying to show and basically prove or reveal that Moses and the prophets is the foundation of what Paul writes about. The explanations that Paul gives is centered around the teachings that's in Moses and the prophets. So we're going to basically read through this chapter and we're going to dissect it. There's 14 verses in here. So what we're going to do is we're going to read it in groups of, I would say, sevens. All right, so we're going to read the first seven. We're going to go back and we're going to dissect it, and then we're going to read the next seven, go back and dissect it as well. So let me pull up the scriptures now. All right. And I hope you guys can see it. All right. So we're going to start from Romans chapter 13, starting from verse 1. And it says, "Let every soul be subject unto the higher powers, for there is no power but Elohim, and the powers that are ordained of Elohim." It says here, "Whosoever therefore resists the power, resists ordinance of Elohim," or rulings, like this is his charge, that certain people be in power. "And they that resist shall receive to themselves damnation." It says, "For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to the evil. Will you then not be afraid of the power? Do that which is good, and you shall have praise of the same," meaning you will have praise of those same powers will praise you. It says here, "For he is a minister to Elohim," or servant to Elohim, "to you for good. But if you do that which is evil, be afraid. For he bears not the sword in vain. For he is a servant of Elohim, avenger, to execute wrath upon him that does evil. Wherefore, you must needs be subject, not only for wrath, but also for your conscience sake." It says here, for meaning this statement here, not only for wrath, is saying not only because you don't want to face the wrath, but also because your conscience sake, so that way you can be innocent in your mind. It says here, because for this cause or this reason, this is why you pay tribute. This is taxes. For they are Elohim's servants or ministers. The word minister actually means servant, attending continuously upon this very thing. Do not render therefore to all their duties, tribute to whom tribute is due, custom to whom custom, fear to whom fear, honor to whom honor. This is a very good principle. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of break this down as far as the simplicity behind submission. There's always this, I would say, this opportunity or this demand to be subject to a higher power or someone in authority or someone in charge, right? So even within the family, you have the scriptures say very clearly in 1 Corinthians 11, very clearly, he says, "I want you to know that the head of every man is Messiah, that the head of the woman is the man, and the head of Messiah is Elohim." So even within the relationship of Messiah and Elohim, there's this charge or there's this authority that the Father has over him. And this is what he's saying exists in the home. And if you continue to go, forward into that whole process, you'll see that the man is the head of the home. He's also the priest, he's the guide, he's the teacher, he's the leader, he's a disciplinary. The woman then, when the husband is not home, the woman then bears the responsibility or the authority of the father and executes the father's desires to the children. And then even within the relationship between siblings, the oldest is the higher power, in regard, using the terms that's mentioned here in verse 1. The older brother is the higher power, meaning that the younger siblings has to be subject to the older siblings. You see? So this is not like some type of a weird situation or weird idea. This is just a matter of respecting the order that's in place, not necessarily that the individuals themselves are going to do things perfectly, because that's not the case. You can see throughout history, you can see in your own home, sometimes the higher power is not doing everything right, everything according to the way it should be. That doesn't remove him from this place of authority. I need you guys to understand that. When you look at the governments, when you look at the nations, when you look at the people in political authority, the governments all over the world, these people are in those positions, and those positions exist, and therefore we need to respect those positions. Not saying that we need to agree with what they do and say. We need to be subject to the positions that's in power. And so we're going to look at a few examples of that type of respect, right? So let's go to Daniel, right? The prophet Daniel chapter 2, and look at his approach to the King Nebuchadnezzar, even though King Nebuchadnezzar at this point in time was a wicked, evil king. But look at what it says. Daniel answered and said, "Blessed be the name of Elohim forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his. And he changes the times and the seasons." Look at what he says. He removes kings and sets up kings. You see that? He's talking about the nations at this point. This is a statement of Daniel recognizing, he just received he basically just received the understanding of the dream, and the dream in Daniel chapter 2, reflecting on all the nations and the empires that will come about one after the other. And he recognizes, he gives blessings and praise to Yah, and he recognizes that it is Yah that removes kings and sets them up. He gives wisdom unto the wise and knowledge to them that know understanding. Also, verse 22, he reveals the deep and secret things. He knows what is in the darkness, and the light dwells in him. So it's interesting how it talks about this authority, and it talks about the authority to be as an executor of judgment, or I would say justice, which it says, verse 3, it says, "For the rulers are not a terror to good works, but to evil. Will you then be afraid of the power? Do that which is good, and you shall be praised of the same." So he's saying that he's not a terror to good works, but to evil. So there's some level of justice system, and I think this is so important for us to grasp. Based off of what we read in Daniel 2, he not only sets up kings, but he also sets up certain principles in these governments to execute justice, even through these wicked people. So there's this conviction that he's able to establish within these governments, most governments, I would say, to execute justice on behalf of, not necessarily righteousness, but the well-being of others. And so we see that clearly. We see it clearly. So this is very clear. Daniel says it. Let's look at another statement by Psalms, because even with the establishment of the government of Israel, you see that he was not really concerned. He was not really confident in the kings of Israel. I'm going to show you that in a second. So Psalm 75, looking at verse 7, it says, "Elohim is the judge. He puts down one and he sets up another." He's the one that determines these things. Let's go back to see what he said in regards to the kings of Israel. So Samuel, which is a prophet, he was also probably the last so-called judge of Israel. And so you can see that right there, right? So it's here, Samuel told all the words of yahuah unto the people that asked him for a king, right? And he said, "This will be the manner of the king that shall reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them for himself. he for his chariots and for his horsemen, and shall run before his chariots. He's talking about like a draft. You know how the army had a draft for the war, and how they would draft your children and your husbands to join the army. Look at what it says here. This is him talking about, he's telling Israel what the kings of Israel will do, that they will promote drafts to take them to be a part of this war. He will appoint him captains over thousands, captains over 50s. He will set them to ear his ground, and reap his harvest, to make him his instruments of war and instruments of his chariots. He will take your daughters and be confectionaries, and to be cooks and bakers. He will take your fields. Look at what he says. He will take your fields. And there's many examples. When you read through the book of Kings and Chronicles, you'll see that different kings responded righteously towards people, and some responded very selfishly. It says he will take your fields, your vineyards, your olive yards, the best of them, and give them to his servants. And he will take a tenth of your seed and of your vineyards, and give to his officers and to his servants. He will take your men servants and maid servants, and the best young men and your donkeys, and put them to work. He will take the tenth of your sheep, and you shall be his servant. And you shall cry out in the day because of your king, which you have chosen. And Yah will not hear you in that day. Look at what it says here. Nevertheless, the people refused to obey the voice of Samuel, and they said, nay, but we will have a king over us. Why? That we also may be like all the nations, and that our king may judge us and go out before us and fight our battles. So this is what happened right before Israel started to receive a king, a different type of government structure. The government structure was based off of the priests, the prophets. It was based off of those who were judges. The judges basically were established to execute and deliver what Yah believed was good and right and wrong in situations. It was never a ruler or tyrannical authority. The judges were never tyrannical or authoritative to the point where they would take over a role of a king, right? There were many times where Israel tried to make judges king. Gideon was one of them as well, and he refused. So we have to understand that the rulership came directly from Yah through his servants that was delivering his messages to basically create that order in Israel. But as you read in 1 Samuel, because they wanted to have a government just like the nations, and because they were afraid of the manner of war that the nations were having amongst each other, they wanted to be prepared to enter into that war and to be all of these things rather than relying on Yah. So this is what is happening now. Because of this is how things are going on. This is how things are in the world. So now this is how things were here. So when we get to Romans, obviously, when we get to Romans, we have the empire of Rome established and being in control, even to the point of controlling Jerusalem. And so he's indicating like this is what Yah is controlling. This is what Yah establishes. One thing he also said, I think you guys remember, Messiah was talking to Pilate and said, you would not have this power. Pilate said, don't you know I have the power to kill you or whatever? And he said, you would not have this power if it wasn't given to you from above. Even Messiah, looking at the authority that Pilate possessed, knowing that he very well does have this authority, but he gets it from Yah. Yah can take it away at any point in time, as we saw the scriptures confirm. So let's look at a few more examples of how Yah in prophecy used the authorities of governments to execute his purpose. Let's look at the prophet Isaiah. Isaiah chapter 44. Isaiah chapter 44, looking at verse 28. Look at what it says here. It says, thus saith Cyrus. Thus saith of Cyrus. So Cyrus was the king of Persia. You'll read about him in the book of Ezra. I believe, no, the book of Ezra. He was, yes, he was the king of Persia. He was the one that was the emperor with the Medes. So it's the Medes and Persians. He's the king of Persia. Listen to what Yah says about Cyrus. It says, he is my shepherd and shall perform all my pleasure, even saying to Jerusalem, you shall be built, and to the temple, your foundation shall be laid. So look at what's happening. Cyrus being the king of Persia, a wicked king, there's no doubt about it. The wickedness of that kingdom is historical. But Yah said that this king will allow Israel or Judah to go and rebuild Jerusalem according to prophecy. You can find that in the Ezra. You can find that in Ezra chapter 7. Let me just look for the statement. There was 3 declarations while Israel was in captivity, 3 declarations of freedom, one from Cyrus, one from Darius, and one from Artaxerxes to go and rebuild Jerusalem. So you can see here, it says here, now this is the copy of the letter that King Artaxerxes gave unto Ezra the priest, the scribe, and even a scribe of the words of the commandments of yahuah. So it says the letter that King Artaxerxes gave to the priests. Let me see if I could find. See, the decree of Darius. Oh, here we go. So it says, in the first year of Cyrus the king made a decree concerning the house of Elohim at Jerusalem. Let the house be built, the place where they offered sacrifices, and let the foundations thereof be strongly laid, and the height thereof three score cubits, and the breadth thereof 3 score cubits. This is the king of Cyrus, this king of Persia, telling them the dimensions of the temple. He's like saying, I confirm, like, go back and rebuild this. So you have Cyrus, you have the king Darius, and then you have Artaxerxes later on. So it's very interesting how these kings actually were being used by Yah to promote his purpose, to promote this purpose in this earth. So, sometimes there's this focus too much on like Republican, Democrat foolishness, not knowing that Yah could use the king of Russia to do something on behalf of his will. You know what I mean? So we need to stop focusing so much on the earthly and the possibilities. And sometimes there's people think that there's no possibility because of what's going on in government. Oh, we can't do this. Nothing's going to happen good because of this person in office or that person, or everything good is going to happen because this person's in office. No, Yah doesn't determine things that way. He uses whoever submits to his conviction. If he's going to move his ruach on the spirit on someone and they accept and they give in to that spirit, they're going to perform what Yah wants them to perform. Isaiah 45 verse 1, it says, thus saith Yahuwah to his anointed, to Cyrus, whose right hand I have held, to subdue nations in front of him. And I will loose the loins of the kings, to open before him the 2-leaved gates, and the gates shall not shut. So he's even telling them, like, he's giving access, full access, and he's delivering the nations into Cyrus' hands. This is the same statement that he said about Nebuchadnezzar. He delivered the nations into Nebuchadnezzar's hands on eagle's wings, it says. So let's look at that real quick, because I definitely want to confirm this, because I don't want us walking around, especially in this country, looking around, getting depressed because of certain crazy leaders, or getting overly excited, getting overly confident in these earthly leaders as well. You don't need to be hopeless. You don't need to feel hopelessness, nor do you need to be confident and feel dependency on any of these world leaders. Yah is going to use who he uses, but you need to serve Yah. Seek ye first the kingdom of heaven and his righteousness, and all these things will be added. See, we don't look at the governments, we respect it. This is what Romans chapter 13 is talking about. Jeremiah chapter 25, looking at verse 9, it says, behold, I send and take all the families of the north, saith Yahuwah, Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, my servant, you hear that? And will bring them against this land and against the inhabitants thereof and against all these nations all around, and I will utterly destroy them and make them an astonishment and an hissing, a perpetual desolations. This is what he's going to use Nebuchadnezzar to do. He refers to him as my servant. My servant. Let's look at one more and then let's go back to Romans. Jeremiah chapter 27, looking at verse 6, it says, and now have I given all these lands into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, my servant, and the beast of the field have I given to him also to serve him. So it's very clear what's going on. It's very clear who has the sovereignty, who has the authority. So when we get back here, it's interesting, all of these things that we read in the prophets, now we come back here, and then people have some type of issue with Paul saying, subject yourself to the higher power. Daniel even called Nebuchadnezzar king of kings. O king, live forever. He said that to Darius or Darius. So the respect that you ought to have does not negate your submission to Yah. As you can see, Daniel had high respects for the kings of Babylon and Medo-Persia. He was thrown into the lion's den with Darius. He was, the three Hebrews was about to get thrown into the furnace by Nebuchadnezzar. They were wicked kings in a wicked empire, but Yah was able to utilize his people as an influence to these wicked nations. While they were in captivity, by the way, while they're in captivity, because of their respect and their honor to the authority, knowing already because they know scripture, they know the inspiration of Yah. Yah told them to submit to Nebuchadnezzar. So that what's the difference with Paul saying submit to the higher powers? There is no power but Elohim. Look what it says. For there is no power but Elohim, the powers that are ordained by Elohim. He's the one that does it. What is Paul saying that's not based off of Torah and the prophets? He's explaining it to you. If you resist the power of the power that he established on this earth, you're resisting Yah. What happened when they resisted Nebuchadnezzar when he came to take them captive? Yah told them in the book of Jeremiah to give themselves over as captives. And those who did not resisted Yah's command. And when they resisted Yah's command, Yah destroyed those people. They were in rebellion, including King Zedekiah, where he watched his two sons get killed by Nebuchadnezzar and then had his eyes burnt out because he resisted the authority. Yah told them to go and submit themselves to the authority of Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon. And then it talks about tribute. It talks about taxes. Calm down. Pay the taxes. You got a lot of these so-called ministries trying to be tax exempt, and it's like, pay the taxes. Pay the taxes. You owe the tribute. That's it. When you get tax exempt, you have to be in agreement. You have to have some type of confederacy with the nations. We don't need no confederacy with no nations. We need to pay the taxes the way what taxes are due. We need to give custom to what custom is due, give respect and honor and fear to where is due. That's it. This is what Yah commands us to do. This is what he tells us to do because he's the one in charge of the sovereignty of the nations. He wouldn't be able to tell us the future of the nations if he wasn't in control. So let's continue to read. Now, we're on Romans chapter 3. We're going to start from verse 8, and we're going to read all the way down to 14. It says here, owe no man anything but to love one another, for he that loves another hath fulfilled the law. For this, you shall not commit adultery. You shall not kill. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness. You shall not covet. And if there's any other commandment, it is briefly understood in this saying, namely, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Love works no ill to his neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfilling or completing of the law. And that knowing the time, that know it is high time to awake out of sleep. For now is our salvation nearer than when we first believed. That the night is far spent and is at hand. Let us therefore cast off the works of darkness. Let us put on the armor of light. Let us walk honestly. Let us walk honestly as in the day, not in rioting and drunkenness, not in chambering and wantonness, not in strife and envying, but put on the Master Yahushua Messiah, and do not make provisions to execute your fleshly desires. Do not plan. Do not make plans to execute your fleshly desires. So let's start from verse 8, right? Owe no man anything. Owe no man anything. Many people, they attribute this owe no man anything in regards to money. I definitely believe that we ought to honor the things that we are in debt to, the things that we borrow. I know sometimes it may be hard and there's a struggle, but you need to keep in your mind that focus, to that when you have opportunity to remember the things that you've taken from others. Now, it's not necessarily only money, is also referring to owing anyone retribution, meaning like if you're doing something or transgressing against, this is why he mentioned the law. If you're transgressing against anyone and you owe retribution, this is what he's trying to tell you. Don't owe nobody any retribution, meaning don't do anything that's going to cause you to owe someone else payment or replacement or your jail, your imprisonment. Don't do evil that's going to cause you to have a debt, but love one another, because he that loves another fulfills or completes or does the law. So then he mentions the laws, all the commandments, because he says, if there's any other commandment, it is briefly understood by this. You tell me, where in this is he trying to explain that Messiah fulfilled the law? He's saying that you're supposed to fulfill the law. Right? Love works no ill to his neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfilling of the law. So he's looking at the commandments and he's looking at the understanding, right? Is briefly understood or comprehended as love your neighbor as yourself. So other commandments that's in the Torah has to apply. And he's telling you simply, the commandments center around loving your neighbor. And in loving your neighbor, you will fulfill and complete and do the laws. You would do those righteous laws, the righteous description, the righteous instruction. Love does not try to cause pain to your neighbor. Therefore, love is the completing of the law. Then he gives an appeal. It is a time to wake up, because deliverance is closer than it was when we first started. The night is already past. The darkness, this is very encouraging to me. Just knowing that going through darkness, going through pain, and realizing like that in going through these things, you're getting closer and closer to deliverance. You're getting closer and closer to where you need to be. And that in this darkness, it says here, let us therefore cast off the works of darkness, the actions, the mindsets, the thoughts, the emotions. Cast those things off and put on the armor of light. Let us walk honestly or with integrity, desiring to do what is right because it is right. As in the day, not in rioting and drunkenness, not in chambering and wantonness, not in strife and envy. Put on the Master Yahushua Messiah, and do not make plans to fulfill fleshly desires. Praise Yah. There's no way. If these chapters are read thoroughly, instead of trying to make it not mean keep the commandments or to disconnect Paul's writings from what Moses and the prophets delivered, it is more work to try to explain that. And if you notice, you'll go to these religious groups, and when they try to exert more work, this is not a mystery. Paul's writings are not mystery books, right? They're not mystery knowledge. There's certain doctrines that the prophets and that Torah teaches that's more difficult, that you have to dive in and really try to understand. Paul's writings is not so. What Paul is doing is trying to make it simple for you. He's not giving you a lecture. He's not giving you a college lecture to try to break down these truths. He's trying to express what these truths are saying so that way you can apply these things practically. That's what he's doing. And you saw him mention all the law and said whatever law is in there. And if you go back to the law, you'll see that half the law is centered around loving your neighbor and not working ill towards, not working that which is ill towards another. So no, not just the 10 commandments, but every commandment that affects your neighbor, every commandment that affects your brothers, is what Yah is telling you to have that responsibility to show love, to show integrity, to be innocent of breaking these things. You can't say the law is done away with, but keep the law so you can love your neighbor. That doesn't make any sense. The law describes how to love your neighbor. And this is what Paul is bringing up in his explanation. So praise Yah, be subject to the higher powers. Do not feel discouraged when higher powers are outside of the realm of what you believe Yah would prefer. But know that Yah is in control. He's always been in control. He was even in control when the very leader that Messiah said, Yah gave you authority, that very leader chose to give him over to the Jews and have him killed. So even though his wife had a dream and told him to leave him alone, he still executed this foolish decision, and Messiah still acknowledged that his authority came from Yah. So we need to have the same example. We need to have the same practice. Accept these things. Yah has a bigger plan for his people if you remain righteous, if you remain faithful, and if you subject yourself to the things that Yah put in place. So praise Yah. I hope that this helped understand more than just the chapter in Romans, but also how to live in these nations that we don't really have the control that we should have. But praise Yah that he's with us even in this state of being. So praise Yah. Look forward to the next chapter. Shalom, everyone.